Oakley dokley. So let's just see. We are live, people. We are live. Okay. So I want to welcome everyone to this episode of Brandstorm. You were probably with us for a couple of our recent brainstorms, so you would potentially know my face. I'm Carolina Jimenez, and my co-pilot here is Seamus. And together we have a incredible business, and we run this brainstorm every fortnight, and it's all about creating the perfect storm for your business and really supporting you in harnessing the storm, being at one with the storm, and not letting life just smash you about, just really sort of owning it and going. um, you know our population have been going through all different types of crises, and it's very easy to get sucked into the noise. But we're here to help you to stay grounded and focused. And so let's dive right into today's presentation of brand. And is where clarity meets courage, and where we intentionally create the perfect storm between strategy, visibility, and momentum, because brands aren't built by accident, they're engineered. So your co-hosts, myself, Carolina Jimenez, together with Seamus Hart, the heart of Cara PR. So I'm the strategist and founder at Cara of the business to brand ecosystem, and my co-pilot Seamus here is the UX designer, the customer journey mastermind, and Seamus is this incredible wealth of knowledge that just seems to know a little bit about everything and a lot about most things.
Yeah, thanks.
When it comes to navigating 99.99% of that type of business, and already has the research and the data to support in making good decisions, to really support your business. So without further ado, today we're talking about advertising. So we have a lot of clients that come in to our business and had terrible experiences working with all different types of agencies. And they're like, the advertising failed, that agency failed, like all of these horrible things happened. I paid all of this money and I got nowhere. And I've had a lot of these experiences myself, and I just have to be really frank and honest. Advertising didn't necessarily, but chances are it. So in today's conversation, we're not really talking about like the usual, there are better ways to run ads. Here's how to do that better. We're more focusing on what we can control in our world and the world of clients that we work with, where advertising is rarely the first problem. So usually the thing that advertising reveals is the problem. Um, it highlights the business, what's happening in the business, and those wherever the business is unable to back up that advertising, that's where things tend to fall apart. So a business can have a beautiful product, it can have an incredible website, a beautifully polished Instagram, and really strong word of mouth and even a really healthy amount of interest, but still can feel like every single dollar that they have spent on advertising has disappeared into thin air. And admittedly, last year when Seamus and I were doing a lot of beta testing, I saw this happen myself with a couple of businesses. And, you know, the advertising copy was amazing, the advertising creative was amazing, but the problem was in the system that was supporting that advertising. So, and it comes back down to that UX again. You know, something as simple as like someone couldn't get to a button, or a button wasn't working, or a form wasn't submitting properly, or it timed out too quickly, or it wasn't optimized for an Apple phone or for a Samsung. All of these contributing factors. But today, let's just zero in, because what I want to unpack today is why that happens, that your advertising dollar just gets burnt up really quickly and you get zero. And it's the way that we're going to address this is not from a fluffy marketing lens, and it's not from a just post more content type of lens. But what we want to really look at it from is from a strategic business lens. So, because the people in this room we know are not amateur, you're professionals, you're good at what you do, and you've built something real. This is exactly why this conversation is so important today. Okie dokie. So, often what we hear from our founders is we need ads. People need to know about us. We need ads. We need to run some ads to get that traffic going. But the real truth that we find is really that the founders, the business need to be ad ready. So the issue is actually the ad readiness. So if I give you a scenario that may or may not feel familiar to you, it goes back to a client that I was working with who was a craft beer founder. They were a local legend. The beer was amazing. We had launch parties. We did a lot of really good work, and they were doing amazing work in the community as well. But the branding, like the branding was beautiful. Locals loved it. Stockists, you know, they were having conversations with Woolies and BWS and Liquorland and all of these fabulous places. But the founder had done the hard yards, is the main part of the story. So really, in a perfect world, you would think like, well, the ads should work, but the sales were inconsistent. The website was great at getting traffic, but the conversions were weak, and boosted posts did nothing meaningful. The paid ads were nothing short of unpredictable. And so while the retailers showed interest, reorders were not what they should have been. And the founder reached the natural conclusion, which was we need more advertising. Like, we must have put in enough budget for enough people to see it to get to the next stage. Now, sometimes that is true, but more often what they actually need is the ad readiness, because the advertising is not a fix for weak foundations. And it is the same as PR, it's an amplifier. So it scales what is already there. If they have an incredible product, but they don't have the systems to be able to pick up on the traffic, and the systems aren't even there, then unfortunately that's where you see all of that budget just disappear. So the fundamentals can be strong, the ads can create the momentum, but if the fundamentals are weak, then the ads are just making the cracks appear a lot bigger and making the ads very expensive. So, this is the core truth of today's session. Advertising is not magic, it is exposure. It exposes whether your message is clear, it exposes whether your audience is right, it will expose whether or not your website is ready, and whether or not your offers make commercial sense, because that's another element that is obviously really important as well. We can touch on that in another session. But very importantly, it exposes whether or not the brand is memorable enough to deserve the click. So Google's own documentation makes this point in a very technical way. Ad ranking is not actually determined by the budget alone. So even if you're spending 2.5 grand on your advertising, the influence of the advertising is by the bid, the ad quality, the landing page quality, auction competitiveness, search context, location, and device. So back to a couple of slides ago where I was mentioning that, the ad hadn't been optimized for a Samsung phone. That there was another part of the research in the UX design element where we we typically will look at, okay, this is your brand, this is the data that supports that you have mostly people looking at your website and looking at your products from a Samsung phone, from a laptop, from a desktop. So these are all the things that we can factor in before we even go to the advertising part. But it's also a really important part of advertising, because if you're not optimized for the platform that your audience are on, then again, you basically might as well roll up your dollars and burn it, because it'll be a lot less stressful than investing your money in the advertising and getting crickets. So the other thing to think about is that Google also states that even if another advertiser bids more, a more relevant ad can still win a high position at a lower price. And it can do that based on the quality of the content, and those other contributing factors that we just mentioned here, like the landing page quality, the competitiveness, the search context, your SEO. So it's all a part of an ecosystem. It's not one thing alone that is going to make or break your advertising. So straight away, we need to retire the old story that advertising success belongs to whoever spends the most money, because realistically, it belongs to whoever is the most commercially coherent. So when ads don't work, you have to ask yourself, what are they exposing? This is the question that we all need to think about, because the ad failed is often the laziest diagnosis in the room. Sometimes the ad was fine. Sometimes, even if it didn't work perfectly, it was still a good ad. It was memorable, it was funny, people loved it, it got a lot of clicks. But, if it got the attention, if it cheated, if it created curiosity, if it sort of cheated your competitors by being tricky, and getting them hooked and wanting to see more and tapping in, it brought the right person to the right page. And then the business lost them. And that is not actually an ad problem, that is a conversion environment problem. So it's a beyond the click issue. So for an e-commerce, Baymard's current benchmark puts average cart abandonment at roughly 70%. And Google has reached reported about 53% on mobile visits are likely to be abandoned if the page takes longer than 3 seconds to load. I believe that the specific number is 2.3 seconds, but let's call it 3. And you can thank all of our amazing instant gratification apps and notifications and everything that we have in this world now, like being able to order your groceries to be delivered in like 2 seconds, high-speed internet, uh, Uber Eats, everything that we do in our day and age right now is instant gratification. People don't typically have to wait or struggle to get what they want. It's normally just a click away. And because there is this new set of expectation, if you're not meeting that expectation, you're already behind the ball. And this is another thing which is like a UX issue we can already look at before we even get to the advertising, which is why we always start with the research and the strategy. So if someone only will wait for 3 seconds, even before we talk creative, targeting, or spend, friction after the click is already doing enormous damage to your advertising campaign. And that's why we do not teach advertising as a standalone tactic. We teach it as a part of the ecosystem. And if you look at any ecosystem in the world, whether it is the weather, whether it is the way in which composting works, if you look at the ecosystem of how schools work, you know, kids come in and then they move up a level and then other kids move on and they move towns, any type of system, they're all feeding each other in one way or another. There's all these different stages of the cycle. So let's start at the first part of the cycle. If we're really going to take your ads to the next level and use them effectively to market your business, we have to really look at the win and lose factors. So the very first win or lose factor is your audience. So if we take, again, the craft beer brand as an example for this particular webinar, the most important thing is obviously thinking about the audience. So who is the craft beer drinker? If the craft beer example that people say, oh, like my audience is anyone who drinks craft beer or anyone who drinks beer, well, that's just lazy targeting. The audience might be premium local buyers, independent venue decision makers, gift purchasers, people who actively choose artisan over mainstream. Then we have event-driven buyers. When we were doing the research for our craft beer, we were even looking at people who potentially were looking to avoid things that the typical beer had in terms of the ingredients. So, for example, preservative free. Perhaps they were looking for a craft beer that you know, was safe for them to drink if they were having chemotherapy, for example. Or if they were someone who had suffered with diabetes, perhaps they were looking for a very low sugar. So there are all of these extra factors in terms of who the consumers are, who they care about, what they care about, whether that is provenance, flavor, and identity. There's different audience with all different types of motivations, price sensitivities, and buying behaviors. And if the audience is too broad, then the ad gets shown to people who may find it mildly interesting, but commercially irrelevant. And then the founders say, oh, paid ads don't work. But the reality is, no, poor audience strategy doesn't work. So for alcohol brands, there's also another layer which we haven't really tapped into yet, but under the current ABC Responsible Alcohol Marketing Code, available age restriction controls also need to be used to exclude minors. And where the age restriction is not available, then the audience must reasonably be expected to comprise at least 80% adults. So that means that targeting, media selection, influencer choices, and creative placement matter even more in this category. And another thing is when you're looking at your advertising, like that bit where I mentioned about knowing where your audience sit in terms of what platforms they use to make sure that you're using those platforms. There are also specific platforms that will not allow for your advertising. So like they will block your advertising. TikTok is an example. You cannot advertise alcohol on TikTok. There are different restrictions per channel when it comes to advertising. So that's something else that you need to factor in when you are doing your advertising strategy. And then also looking at, okay, so if my demographic is a Facebook user, well, what time are you showing your ad? You know, are they a user that is on at nighttime? They're scrolling after school, or perhaps, you know, they're someone who only goes on the weekend between 7 or 8 o'clock. These are all factors that we would be considering when we're looking at how we're going to build out your advertising strategy to make it always be in the position of most opportunity. So right from the start, advertising is already about judgment. It's not just button clicking. It's not box ticking. It's a whole array of decision making and pre-qualifying. So win or lose factor 2 is the message and the creative, because pretty is not persuasive. And pretty is not alone is not persuasive. Clear is going to beat clever any day of the week, and memorable will always beat busy. So here I have a funny ad that I will play for you. But it takes a while to actually really know, like, what is this ad about?
Dinner tonight's at 7:30. Maybe we should have some oysters. Babe?
Joining rooms? What are the chances? I opened the door thinking it was a closet and Rog was there. It's a room exactly the same as ours. Mirror image. Yes, it's like we're sleeping in the same bed. What's this door for? Oh, we're joining rooms. Oh, what are the odds?
So, like, that's a pretty silly and short ad, but it's memorable and it's relatable. Like, if we think about, you know, the guy who's just basically trying to find a way to have his mates around, while his wife is just trying to, you know, have a nice romantic night together, and she's getting all dressed up. Um, you know, it's short, it's sharp, it gives you a real life scenario, and then it's clever and it's funny. So it sort of taps into a little bit of emotion. It's creative, and what we see is where founders often overestimate aesthetics and they underestimate the persuasion. So a beautiful ad is not automatically a strong ad. I'd be interested to know if you think that this would be a strong ad or not. But the question is not, does this look nice? The question is, does this stop the scroll? Does it communicate the value fast? Does it create desire? And is it making the brand memorable? Does it make the next step feel obvious? So if you just watch that ad, is it memorable to you? Does it give you a very clear next step of, oh, okay, right, buy this beer. Because Nielsen's advertising effectiveness research has found that weak creative processes produce weak sales lift. So while strong creative delivers stronger sales lift and relies heavily on media weight alone, Nielsen has also reported that when creative is strong, it can be the dominant driver of in-market success, including in digital environments. Another example of good advertising, but where it's sort of gone overkill, is if we look at the advertising for Energizer Bunny versus Eveready. Both of them create really good ads, but they are so overkill that at the end of it and throughout it, you don't even know what battery it was for. So when the founder says we just need to spend more, sometimes what they really need is just better creative discipline. Not louder, not busier, just better overall. So win or lose factor 3 is your landing page and your customer journey. Everything always comes back to that customer journey because the click is not the win, the journey is. So it really forces us to really evaluate where our biggest leaks are. So one of the biggest leaks is that the ad promises one thing, but the landing page says something slightly different, or it looks slightly different. So people get confused. The offer is buried, the copy is vague, or the call to action is unclear. And sometimes the mobile experience is clunky or just pretty much non-existent, or potentially the checkout asks too much. And this is the beauty of, again, starting with UX design. We're looking first at how people are going to use your website, your app, the mobile version, the landing page, making sure that that user has the right experience to make it as easy as possible from the moment that they see what they want, that they go straight into the process of being able to buy, and that it's really easy and friction-free and painless. And it comes down to really understanding the kind of person that you're talking to. So like in this image here, it's got this funny illustration about, hey, what kind of beer do you want? Like, what kind of drinker are you? You know, are you a bro kind of drinker? Are you just having beers with the boys on the weekend? So if so, potentially the strategy for your advertising there is going to be something that is funny and short, and you know, that pictures a couple of guys with their mates down at the pub and has that sort of larrikin edge to it. If you're talking more to the dads that are watching the footy on the weekend, then your advertising is going to be really connecting with that type of person and that kind of scenario, just sort of because it is mimicking who they are and what they're interested in, and really making that connection of like, it's a no-brainer. You know, this beer is made for you because you're a dad on a weekend on the couch watching the footy with his mate. So we would then again be looking at, all right, in the advertising strategy, we're going to play it during those times when dad is at home watching the footy, it's in between the ads, and he's just having a casual scroll through at a 3-4 o'clock before the game starts, or during the break, something like that. So the mobile experience is really important. The checkout is really, really important as well. And when we focus in on making sure that we've really crossed those primary friction points and made sure that they are as smooth and as clearly communicated as possible, then suddenly the founder thinks they can see why their ad has underperformed if we go through each of those points So while in some instances the ad may not have done exactly what it was meant to, chances are it has brought some people into an environment that was not ready to convert them. And while Google's mobile research says 53% of visits are most likely to be abandoned, if a page takes longer than 3 seconds, then you're going to lose your audience, which is just really upsetting because especially if you're spending that money and you've gone to the effort of making sure that it's really good creative and it's well thought out and you've made sure that it's being shown at the right times. It's just devastating to see that money get burnt up. So the win or lose factor 4 is the commercial maths. So can the business afford the customer? Now, as we know, craft beer is already a really expensive exercise. If you go to buy any type of beer, you could go get yourself a VB, you could go get yourself a Tui's, whether you're buying it in a bottle or you're just getting it at the tap. Any standard beer is going to be way cheaper to buy than a craft beer because there's so much more that goes into making a craft beer. And so when you're looking at those metrics, there's so much more that needs to go into making sure that you are showing it to the right people, the people that actually care about that extra level of finessing of the beer, the ingredients, the price point. Perhaps they have a certain level of prestige that they attach to drinking a craft beer, or there's an experience that they're looking for in the craft beer that they wouldn't get from a standard beer. But the commercial viability is really important, and too many people actually skip this step, which is the maths, which will make or break the business's viability to not only run ads, but also to be able to stay viable. So can your margin actually carry the paid acquisition? Can your average order value support the spend? And is there repeat purchase? Is there wholesale upside? Is there email recovery? And is there retargeting? These are all really important questions that you need to be asking yourself when you're thinking about how you're going to run your ads. Because if you're not factoring in all of these elements, then again, the campaign can look busy and it can still be commercially broken. And so this is especially important for products like craft beer, where the margin, distribution, retailer cut, promotions, and compliance all squeeze the profitability so tightly that it's actually one of the biggest reasons for so many craft beer labels to start and end within only like a couple of years. It was actually really sad. So I think it was in 2021, I believe there was a new craft beer opening like almost every 10 to 15 days. But sadly, a lot of them, microbrewers were all out of business very quickly. So if the numbers are not viable, more advertising is not going to solve that issue. If anything, it's going to accelerate the loss, which is why advertising decisions should never really be made in isolation to the business model. So before you think about spending more on ads and really investing in that space, you have to obviously sit down and really look at a few key areas, because that will be the make or break factor as to whether or not you get return on your investment, or whether or not you just end up burning cash. And it is so easy to do. If you say to Meta, I only want to invest $30 a day, it will make sure it spends that whole $30. If you say to Meta, I only want to spend $10 a day, it will spend that whole $10, but you're barely going to get what you need. So before you start your advertising, we have to make sure that we are clear, that we are credible, that we are providing a friction-free, easy journey for people to buy from us, that we can afford the customer and that we can hold the demand. Oh, here we go. Oops. So if advertising is not the villain and it's not the savior either, it is the amplifier, and it's going to reveal whether or not your messaging is sharp enough, whether your audience is right, whether the journey is clean, whether the business model holds, and whether the brand has earned enough trust to compete and turn that attention into momentum. So if your ads aren't working, the questions aren't just, how do I fix the campaign? The better question to ask yourself is, what is this campaign showing me about my business? And once you understand that, you can stop wasting money trying to force growth, and you can actually start building a business that is actually ready for visibility. And that is the work. That's the difference. And that is exactly where Cara PR comes in. And these are all parts of our Cara PR business to brand ecosystem. We're looking at your business as 4 interconnected layers. We've got the foundation, the infrastructure, the visibility, and then building the momentum from that point onwards. And in the foundation, we always start with the strategy. Before we expose your business and before we can amplify, we always have to stabilize it. We look at your ideal client psychology, the messaging architecture, authority positioning, your offer ladder, pricing integrity, as well as the category ownership. Strategy without systems is only going to create burnout in your business, in your team. And the systems without strategy is only going to create noise. So the most important thing when we start working with you is looking at that conversion-led website. We're building out your CRM with the tagging. We are looking at your email nurture sequences, sales funnels, lead magnets, and your analytics, making sure that we're tracking everything that we do so that we can continue to learn and optimize 365 days a year, 24/7. And once we have gotten you through that stage of the ecosystem, that we have built your foundation and we've built your structure and your automation, then we go to work on amplifying and engineering your authority. And we're doing that through another structured system of PR, podcasting, social media, paid ads, launch campaigns, and founder thought leadership. So as you can see, and as I was talking about before, paid ads is not the only strategy that you should be looking at in your business in terms of bringing in more clients and getting your name out there. So once we've built your business to brand ecosystem, we start optimizing and we continue that optimizing process. So we're looking at how we're building out retainers inside your business, the optimization of the funnel. We're refining the data continuously. We're building your authority, and we're expanding different pathways in which your audience can find you and can also stay in your orbit. And then we're looking at partnership strategies. So this is another really effective tool, your partnership strategy. And it really helps us to surround the founder with a complete success layer ecosystem. So Brand success is circular. It's not linear. The foundation feeds the infrastructure. The infrastructure feeds the visibility. The visibility feeds the momentum, and then the momentum strengthens the foundation. And that's what we do in the 90-day transformation. We install your ecosystem. That is not theory. It's not fluff. It is infrastructure, which is clear authority positioning, engineered messaging, CRM and automation, conversion optimized websites, structured visibility, and then your momentum framework. Female-led fashion and wellness brands earning above 15K a month. We will guarantee you 30 high-intent, brand-aligned opportunities within 90 days of working with us, or you don't pay. Okay, so if you're watching this video, then chances are right now you might be running a business. But I want to ask you a quick question. Does it truly feel like a brand? Because we both know that there's a big difference, and you can see that every time you go into a Nike or perhaps one of your favorite designer stores. So if you're tired of competing on price, chasing clients, and feeling like your business is just another option, you're about to discover how to change that. Because over the next 90 days, I'm going to show you how to go from blending in to standing out so boldly that your ideal clients can't help but choose you. So that is our current offer for female-led fashion and eco-wellness businesses. We will build out your entire ecosystem over 90 days to get you that exposure that you've been looking for, that you've been working hard towards. If you would like more information, feel free to book a call through our website. I will pop the booking link at the bottom of the page. But that pretty much concludes our presentation for today. If anyone has any questions, let me just see if anyone's popped anything in the chat. Seamus, real quick, have you got anything to add on to our advertising piece and the UX element in terms of the research?
Not that I can actually think of. You covered so much, but really it's just, I think the key message that I got out of it, it's really the importance of research and kind of understanding and putting those structures in place. So the way that I look at UX, it's just another business extension, and it's something that's really needed for a business as you know, a delivery tool, if you think it in those terms. It's really aligning what you're doing to who your customers are and what they want.
Yeah, absolutely. Reverse engineering, based on what your design outcome is, it's reverse engineering the results through what we already know, through what is already available out there. It's not guesswork, it is pure triaging and diagnosing. So I'm just bringing up the questions. Hold on real quick. So one of the questions we got, so have you ever felt like the advertising should be working for your business by now, but it still feels unpredictable? Well, that really comes down to if the advertising wasn't giving you the traction that you expected after a certain period of time, I mean, it does take a couple of days for the algorithm to pick up the adverts, and it takes a few different variations as well. But in monitoring the advertising platform, in monitoring, I suppose, the audience and looking at the back end, you can very quickly see if an ad is not working. So we would say between 3 to 7 days is sort of the initial part where you should be getting that data as to whether or not it's a good ad. And then the other bit with the tracking is that you should be able to see with the ad where people drop off. And that's a really important part of advertising. Um,
Yeah, and additionally, I was just going to add as well, one of the stages that a lot of people, and this is kind of back in agency land, is that they'll jump onto a massive ad campaign, but they don't do the initial research. So what they're effectively doing is testing by the wrong metrics. So they're doing a lot of guess. So that's where you get the volatility and the randomness, because what you're creating, in a social science term, is what they call a confounding variable. So it's something that you don't know that's affecting how your advertising campaign's actually running. And it's why really understanding those personas and that upfront research is so vital to it before you start, yeah, even popping stuff on Facebook and Instagram.
yeah, yeah. So someone else has asked about um, do we actually know who the highest value customer is? Well, if you don't know who your highest value customer is, that really clearly shows that you don't have a strategy in place. Because how can you create a winning advertisement if you don't know who you're creating it for? So it comes back to sort of saying, well, what is it that I'm trying to sell? And why is that important? And how is that going to change somebody's life?
Hmm.
Right, Seamus?
Oh no, no, 100%. And it's an interesting one. And again, it goes back to kind of my previous point, is that part of it as well is not understanding who you're actually marketing for, which part of it is that you haven't done the research up front. There's a lot of assumptions, and these can be tested really simply and really cheaply. Just going out, like I've had so many examples of, go out and actually ask for the client, for the, what they're actually looking for. Best example of it I can think of is when you're talking about solving that problem statement for a user. Best example was from a Reagan book from the 80s, and the joke was that he had a Russian counterpart over. Reagan pulled out the space pen and he goes, "Do your cosmonauts have anything like this? Can ride upside down underwater. It cost us, $100 million to make. Do your cosmonauts have anything like this?" And apparently the counterpart was like, "Well, that's amazing. Like, no, we don't." And then so Reagan's asked, "What do you use?" And he goes, "Well, a pencil." The problem is that sometimes you over-engineer a problem, and it's because you haven't actually understood what a customer's doing within kind of the end-to-end process, or who they really are, as kind of you said before.
Yeah. The other question I've got here is, how do I know whether I genuinely need ads or whether I'm just frustrated that the organic growth feels too slow?
Ooh, that's a really good one. There's there's a few things around that. Usually you one of the big things that I found out working within a lot of CRO projects is what you call success metrics. So these are opposite to vanity metrics. So sometimes what you're looking for success and not testing it on the right thing. So off the bat, impressions is usually a pretty big one.
Yeah.
Like if you're just chasing an arbitrary impression number, that doesn't always translate to conversion. It's just a number and you're getting a lot of eyeballs on it. It's not actually the right one about those conversion percentages and dwell time, or reducing bounce,
Yeah.
or let's say load time on a mobile page, which does factor in how conversion works. So it's usually understanding what those metrics are you're actually testing against before, um, really answering those sorts of questions if it's successful or not.
Yeah. Um, The next question we have is, if people are clicking but not converting, how do I work out whether the issue is the ad, the offer, or the website? So my first thought would be, if they're clicking but not converting, the first thing that I would be looking at is, well, who are these demographic of people? You know, are they the right people that are actually looking at that? Because yeah, if they click on it, they're clearly interested, but if they don't go to the next step, then chances are they're then not the right person, or they haven't found the offer valuable enough or to be solving what it is that they're actually after. So you're not going to know what they're after unless you're first sort of looking at who that demographic is. And I will tell you about this one example I had for a product that was targeted towards women, that then had a man actually signing up for that product, and didn't follow through clearly. But it was just the whole targeting was wrong, because it was supposed to be for women, to women, dealing with women's things, and for a guy to be included in the audience is just, it already shows like one hole there in the strategy and in the advertising. So that was interesting. But the other thing too is the offer. So sometimes what we find is, if your offer is not clear enough, you will just leave people confused in what it is that you're offering. So it can, what would you say, Seamus, would be the easiest way to work out between the three of those? Because
I
I
well, from a well, if you're getting a lot of high level click through, I look at it from like a content point of view,
mm,
from a user experience point of view, and from a cognitive load point of view. So it could be that one of the biggest problems, and I've seen this with insurance products, is that they go through, they see an offer, they click on it, and then they jump onto the page and then they go out.
yeah,
And it's because there's too much information on
yeah,
there. It's
yeah,
like a wall of text, and the person just switches off their brain and goes, that's too hard.
yeah, agree.
Um, there's the other one where there's too many choices. Now, a lot of people love this idea of like, oh, we'll put more offers on there. We'll put this, we'll put um, more buttons. Literally, if there's any, you've just got to think of about it like this. If there's any more than 5 items on there, and especially a conversion page, it's not going to convert. Human
Mm,
mind can work with choice of 5 ± 2. If they're under cognitive load, it's about 3.
mm,
So it could be that, or it could also be another thing is the Fleisch-Kincaid test on text. So it's like it's way too complicated for someone to understand it, like a really snapshot elevator pitch level. People tend to glaze over and they'll just see a wall of text and go, yeah, it's
yeah,
too
yeah,
scary.
yeah. If it's too wordy, or if the offer is too vague, or if it's too like, if it's being oversold and people can't trust what someone is saying, someone's promising you a golden goose on a cloud is going to come down to your lounge. It's not believable, right?
Or the other one as well, to your point, is also from a technical point of view. Sometimes you put way too much on there, it takes forever to load, and by the time the person goes back to it, they've completely forgot about it. Huge problem on mobile, not so much on desktop, but I mean, with optimization and bandwidth speeds now, it's not the problem it used to be, but also look at the weight of your page. A great thing to chuck any conversion page through, which will give you a snapshot, is the Google speed test.
Yeah,
If your conversion page is not doing 9 out of 10, it's in kind of the red zone, and the drop off just falls off a cliff very, very quickly. And it could be anything from the semantics of how your text works on your site. It could be anything from technical. It could be images way too big. So you're chucking in, 20 megs worth of video, images in. So it's probably the easiest way. If people are clicking through and they're not going further, it's usually just 5 small pillars that are very, very fixable. But again,
Yeah.
you still need to do the research and understand what's below the iceberg. So you've just got the tip of the iceberg. It's what's
Below the
underneath.
surface. Yeah, totally. And we've got time for 2 more questions. So, so we've got, at what point does boosting posts become a waste of money? Well, in the advertising training that we've had, boosting is always a waste of money, because you're basically just saying, show this to as many people as possible, and there's zero control around who those people are, why they would be interested in it, whether they're so there's not enough control or refinement in boosting a post for it to actually be in any way really productive for what it is that you want to achieve. So we would never recommend boosting.
The best example I've got of it, and it was from when I was doing a food and beverage thing quite some time ago. Think about your ad campaign like a steak. So if you get a really good high quality steak and you cook it medium or rare, so it's really well done. And if it's prepared properly, it's awesome. It's going to go to the right people. They're going to love it. If you buy a really bad cut of steak, cook the absolute crap out of it, it doesn't matter how much tomato sauce you put on it, which is boosting, it's not going to make it taste like a 5-star grade piece of Wagyu that's, grass fed and all this other stuff. All you're doing is just putting tomato sauce on a really bad piece of steak. A lot of the times it's just working out what the message is. It's just really,
I like that analogy.
yeah, sorry.
No, that's hilarious. So one more question, which were, for a premium service or product, how do you advertise without ending up competing on price? In my opinion, the way that you would not compete on price for a premium product would be in well as the outcome, the value and the outcome. So if someone is paying a premium for a premium product, they're generally more likely to have a higher expectation of what the end result is going to be. So whether that is, they want to be seen as the most beautiful person, or the most beautiful skin and the most knowledgeable person, versus someone who just wants lots of people to know who they are. Or, we look at the reasons why someone would spend, hundreds and thousands on a Givenchy bag versus just going to Strand Bags and buying a $10 bag. There's a level of prestige. There is a sense of a feeling and an experience and different, I suppose, different things that we sort of relate to in terms of having a Givenchy bag. You're a lot more sort of high end and high class. It's a status thing. You can almost liken yourself to someone like a Paris Hilton. There's this exclusivity about it. There's the bragging rights. There's a whole experience and a lifestyle imagery that happens with the price tag and the whole, I suppose, the prestige of having that bag. Seamus, what would you say about that for people who are not wanting to compete on price for a higher ticket item?
It's really an interesting one, and there's some great books on it. So there's one from a guy called William Poundstone who goes into the what value actually is. Part of it, as you've kind of explained, is the prestige and like the real estate in someone's mind. The other part is also fulfilling a certain need. So there's a lot of products that you think of that you think are expensive or not expensive, and probably the easiest way I can explain it is a cup of coffee. Is that where you buy it? So a lot of these are context specific items. So if you think from an epistemic point of view, they're content specific. So if I were to go to McDonald's and pay $6 for a coffee, I would think that's really expensive. Yet if I go to my cafe and pay the same amount, it's the service model that makes up for the difference in it. So I'm getting in a really nice cup. They also give me a little biscuit on the side. They do all the nice artwork. Ideologically, still the same coffee, but I'm not thinking about the money attached to it. You're talking about the experience, where the value and the price goes out the window is how a person actually looks at it. And it works inversely also as well for really low prices. So there's a great study on, have you ever been to New York and
I've
so
been to
in Times Square, there's this great place where you can buy cheap theatre tickets. Now, what they found out is that there's a discount on them, and if they're too low, people don't buy it. And if they're not low enough, people won't buy it. There's like this optimum thing. So if there's 80% off a ticket, a person will automatically think, gee, that's too expensive. Like there must be something really wrong with it if they're cutting that down. On the flip side, they also found out if they did like a 10 to 20% discount, no one would buy the tickets because they're like, you know what, I could just spend a little bit more and get a better seat. So it's discounting as well. What they're finding is it's really that context. The context is meeting the experience within the person's brain, and that's where really understanding the psychology of how your customer works within a framework, that's where it's the really important thing because that's defining value. And I've done a ton of research on similar products as well, where you actually find out some of the values that you think you have in your product that a person has through their experience, they don't necessarily have. It's really weird when you'll get them out there, and it's really, really small things. It's like um, one of the articles I read recently is like the PowerPoints and that, and the USB cables on the new country link trains for the Blue Mountains and Newcastle and all that. It's like they bumped the prices up on those trains very significantly, but because there's now a tray and I can plug my laptop in,
right. It's now working.
there's been no feedback at all. And
Yeah.
it's purely because when they look at it like for a user, they've gone from an old train where they can't charge their phone or laptop to I can do work on the train. This is great.
Yeah.
I haven't even looked at like a 20% increase on it. It's like it just doesn't enter the brain because you're like, I'm getting a much better experience.
Yeah.
And it's understanding like aligning those user goals to what your experience is. The more you
Yeah.
can match, the more the price goes out the user's brain.
Yeah. So we have one last question. We're a bit over time because we
Yep.
love having a chat.
Oh no, absolutely. It's interesting stuff. It's like you could just do like shows on on each of the questions.
Yeah. So this person asks, if a business can only afford to fix one thing before advertising, what should it be? I
Ooh.
personally think it's the research,
Yeah.
aligning, doing the research to make sure that, you can quantify who it is that you're actually advertising to. Because if you don't know, you're just essentially just spraying money, hoping that, someone will come in from that. Someone will grab a hold of it and come into your business. So that would be my thing. What about you, Seamus? What do you think?
I'd say exactly the same thing, and I'd even quote a couple of the big consultancies and also Nielsen, and there's stacks of research on it if you want to go and have a look at it. But it says every dollar of research that you put into your business, you're getting $100 back from your product.
Yeah,
It's basically, it's not something that it's like a frivolous activity. It's a very deep value thing because it's effectively the IP of how your business runs. The
yeah,
better you understand that, the better you understand the psychology of your user, the easier it is to actually create value from it for your customer and for you. So it's yeah, I would 100% agree. It's like the research piece.
yeah. Amazing. Well, there we go. That's all that we've got time for today on Friday the 13th. Woo, Friday the
Woohoo.
13th. You're wearing black. Maybe I should be I don't know.
Oh yeah, I'm throwing it. Although I had some eggs this morning and I had two double yolkers, so that's crazy.
There you go. It really is Friday the 13th.
Yeah.
Amazing. All right. Well, look, thank you everyone for joining us for this live. Thank you, Seamus, for dialing in. I know you've been sick this week, so
Mhm.
you've soldiered up for the call. Appreciate it.
Yeah,
And
all copied up.
if anybody has any further questions, you're welcome to email them through to Carolina at Cara PR, or just pop them in the chat. Or in any of the posts. So we will sign off for now. Wishing you all a fabulous weekend. We'll be back on in 2 weeks for our next brainstorm. So over and out.